welcome to the fourth episode of Inside the Salesforce Ecosystem, where we dive deep with the experts and trailblazers shaping the future of Salesforce. I'm your host, Luke White, and in every episode, we're exploring unique journeys, challenges, and insights of those who make this ecosystem thrive. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Brian Collins. He's a VP of Growth and Marketing at Pimly. Pimly is the first B2B product information management PIM solution built directly on Salesforce. Thank you for joining me today, Brian. Absolute pleasure. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here. Excited to chat with you.
Awesome. So let's kick off. So a little introduction about yourself and your role at Pimly.
Yeah. So my role at Pimly, I'm the VP of Growth and Marketing. So a little bit of background. I was an early joiner of the company. I think I was either the third or the fourth employee when I joined. So I've been a part of most of our go-to-market activities to date. So that spans primarily across sales, marketing, and demand generation within the ecosystem. So all those sub items then essentially flow in through me. And then I guess that also includes interacting with our partners, which are a very, very important part of our strategy and then the ecosystem in general.
And give us a little bit of background as well in terms of what Pimly are doing, because obviously we know that it's sort of unifying some of that PIM and CRM onto Salesforce. But why is it such a game changer for businesses? And maybe go back to what it does as well for people who aren't aware.
Yeah. And I'll give a little bit of background about myself too, which kind of informs my perspective of why I think it's so innovative. So I've spent about 15 years in the SaaS world, selling a variety of different types of SaaS solutions in different ecosystems to different markets. So that's, spanned HR, benefits to sales tech, marketing tech, even into educational technology. And so what got me excited about Pimly is that there's some simple concepts that Pimly has adopted that I think really differentiates itself as you look forward into the digital landscape or the digital transformation space that many businesses are progressing through. So just for anyone who doesn't know what a PIM is, just to kind of baseline there. So a PIM is a product information management solution. So what that means is that it stores and creates an easy place to manage all of a company's super valuable commercially ready product information. So if you think about, buying, a product online is probably the easiest way to think about it. You have all these different attributes about the product, the size, the height, the width, different descriptions of the product and its features. You have all the pictures and images and videos and documents that go with that. And so as a business then sells that across multiple geographies or through different sales channels, that information needs to be slightly different contextually. And so if you think about like one product may have, we'll call it 100 attributes. Well, if you scale that across all the places that a company would sell that 100 attributes may, become 5,000 pretty quickly. And so you get this volume and scale issue to make sure that the information's accurate everywhere that it needs to be for everyone who's consuming it. And the stakes are pretty high because if the information is accurate and effective, it leads to more sales. More people are converting their purchases. Sales teams have what they need to sell more effectively. And if the information's not right, it can leave trend towards abandoned shopping carts or missed sales and that sort of stuff. And so what got me so excited about Pimly specifically is kind of the philosophy and the architecture of Pimly, which really sets it apart from other solutions in the market. So PIM as a category has existed for, we'll call it roughly 30 years in some capacity. It's just now starting to mature in a similar way to like how CRM has existed for multiple decades. But then in the late aughts, the 2010s, CRM with Salesforce, at the head really started to crystallize and mature and standardize. That PIM is kind of going through that resurgence now. And so what more and more companies are discovering as they increasingly go through their digital transformation is that it makes a ton of sense for all of your product information to live on the same platform as your customer data. And so why is that? Well, you can start to understand what customers purchase, what products. You can create very specific tailored marketing journeys to customers with relevant product information to increase sales and that sort of thing. It also, then there's just some simple IT elements to it. It creates simplicity in terms of architecture. And so that is a big piece of Pimly's differentiation. So to date, every other PIM solution on the market is a standalone solution you would need to onboard as an organization and then manage and maintain. And then you'd have to build integrations to all these systems. And almost everybody wants or needs to build an integration between the PIM and the CRM. And so Pimly effectively removes that component, and it puts all of your product information native on the Salesforce platform across and usable across all of your Salesforce clouds. So depending on your strategy, it can fit pretty nicely like a puzzle piece into the equation. And so far, customers really are embracing that idea. And so we have new customers signing on for their first PIM, right, and organizing the product information. We also have customers migrating from legacy or existing PIMs because they believe in this vision. And so I'm sure we'll get into AI, but it presents a ton of value in terms of Agentforce and AI when you put all that data together on the same platform.
Also, I feel it's a trend, isn't it? More and more companies, I think, going through this phase in technology and software where it's been, all these systems can all stand alone. And now more and more, actually, integration is fine, but sometimes integration has its own issues. So now more and more are looking for that one platform that can have everything on. I think that's what Salesforce does is a good job, is you can have all these platforms sort of almost on one central place. So I guess that move to having the Pimly onto Salesforce was an obvious one from day one. That was where you were going to focus on in that Salesforce market.
Yeah, it was obvious for us for a couple of reasons. So Salesforce is an absolutely wonderful platform. I mean, it's like the world's best business software. More and more companies run their entire front office on Salesforce. And so our vision is to make product information available for everyone that needs it and ensure that it's accurate. So putting it on the platform that a material number of employees and users are using made a ton of sense for us initially. And so we've been, seeing a lot of success there and tracking that piece down.
And in terms of so obviously us at PDF Butler, we're sort of industry agnostic, but how does it work with the PIMs? Is there certain industries or certain sectors that are more of a fit for it, or can it go across all of it? What's a typical makeup, I guess, of a Pimly customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as it stands today, customers that are really good fit for Pimly are customers that are on a Salesforce journey or continuing their Salesforce journey. That's pretty obviously fundamental for us. And then companies that make products, so that could be manufacturing. That's a pretty obvious place for us. Or they care about their products and the way that they market them in a very specific way. So the medical device industry, the CPG space are also really good fits for us. We do get a lot of interest from companies that sell intangible products because they do have product data challenges and that sort of thing, but the needs are a bit different. So really our sweet spot are companies that make physical products and then use Salesforce as a strategic tool within the business. But we operate globally. The needs aren't really specifically tied to a geographical location. And then the other interesting piece about Pimly is that our customer makeup spans everything from the large enterprise down to the more SMB just getting started. So it's interesting how it kind of fits up and down that maturity model for the customers. But that's where I say we're really good. Really, our sweet spot is definitely with manufacturing customers that sell B2B, especially. The B2B space has been a bit underserved in terms of solutions for product information to date. Most of the other, comparable solutions to Pimly have really focused on B2C and helping companies promote their products through e-commerce platforms direct to their customers. And so that's another area that we feel that we're differentiated, is because of what we can do with Pimly on Salesforce. We can meet more complex needs that B2B customers will have, because B2B products are typically more complex. There's more components, there's more information. Think about it like large machines as opposed to like a t-shirt. It gets a bit more complex. And so that's where Pimly will do things that another PIM wouldn't consider doing. So 2 examples of that would be helping enable a sales team. So if you're selling a lot of really large, complicated, machines, being able to log into Salesforce and easily query a product and see all that information available and how it fits within your broader product portfolio is super, super helpful in getting it contextualized to make sure that you are proposing the right solution for your customers and reducing any misquotes and missales. And then the other example would be on the service side of the house. So traditionally, like I said, PIMs focus on this e-commerce element. So how do you make your product details page as beautiful and robust and accurate as possible to convert sales? Well, we think about the life cycle of a product and a customer a little bit longer than that. And so, yes, Pimly can obviously support all those e-commerce needs, but let's say a customer buys the product and has an issue, which inevitably happens, and they call into a service agent. Because Pimly is built native to Salesforce, that same accurate product information can be made available to a service agent, so they don't need to swivel their chair into another system or get back to someone. They can, identify the issue and help the customer. And then it also provides an opportunity for the organization to put additional information into the PIM and Pimly that they may otherwise not have. So an example there would be like a known issue about a product. Right? You traditionally would not put your known issues in other PIMs because that's not going to help you sell more of your product online. But in Pimly, you would, because you want your service agents to have that in their view when the customer request comes in. So that's another reason why what we're doing, we feel is a bit different and innovating our category.
So it's interesting. I'm just going to go off on a little tangent here a little bit, but you talk about service agents, and I feel at the moment with Agentforce, and I think, service agents seem to be the most obvious, immediate fit for Agentforce. It's that use case sort of screams out. So I'm guessing, what work have you done at Pimly with Agentforce, especially the service side? Because I feel like you've got all that data sat in Pimly that's going to be going to really help feed the data into the agent that's dealing with the end customer.
Exactly. This is probably what gets me the most excited about Pimly. This is kind of the future. We've been laying the foundation and seeing success early on with the differentiation points that I've articulated. Where we really see this jumping off is with AI and Agentforce. And so we were a first mover. As soon as Salesforce started to make announcements, we started building. So in Dreamforce 2023, we had our first prototypes and how we're using AI throughout the application. And so the way to think about it, like conceptually, and then I'll give you a couple tangible examples, is when you're building these agents, and if you give them more information, generally, they'll be able to be more helpfully. So our like thesis or our hypothesis is, if you provide the agent the customer data, the relevant object data, so if it's a service agent, it'd be like the case details data, or if it's a sales seller, maybe it's like the opportunity and account data, but then also the product information, you get this wonderful set of information to then, perform a business action successfully. So maybe that's helping the customer, maybe that's winning a sale. And so there's like two fundamental types of agents that we're focused on currently. So one of them would be helping service agents with cases. And so I'm happy, by the way, we have demos and stuff that we can show that we've built out, where like a customer request comes in, and then the service agent has their their Agentforce bot available to them, and they can ask for assistance with the case. And then the bot will be able to, like I mentioned before, look in and see the case details, the account details, any of the relevant customer information in Salesforce, as well as the product information. And then it will provide a roadmap for the service agent about how they can effectively remediate and help the case and help the customer, and potentially even provide upsell, cross-sell opportunities, very easy to them, to other products in the portfolio, thus helping kind of turn this this service world into a bit more of a profit center, where maybe it otherwise has been a little bit of a struggle. So that's a huge use case for us. The first place to start is enabling the service agents so they can be more effectively, and then obviously downstream from that would be case deflection, and having with the bot having more information about the products, be able to help with more cases before it actually even hits a physical human to help with the case. So that's one work stream. The other big work stream I mentioned before is when you're selling B2B, your products can be your product portfolio can be robust. It can be complex. Your product can be configured or even customized. Like, there can be a lot of different varying elements to it. And so we think about this concept of product enablement. And so I come from a background in sales, marketing, but then sales ops and sales enablement. And so there's multiple disciplines within sales enablement, but the hardest, so there's like sales methodology, sales process, there's domain information, all these things you need to know to be a successful seller. The big squirrely one that's really hard for companies is product enablement. So one piece of it is just making that information accessible and available to the salespeople. Can be hard, and it can be overwhelming, especially if the data is robust and it's complex and it's all over the place. And so we want to focus on that pillar of enablement for Salesforce users, and we're calling it product concierge. So you'll be able to come in and you can query and ask the agent any sort of questions you might have about your products. And not only will they return an answer, but they'll actually contextualize that answer for you, so you can better understand how that might be applicable in the world. So the demo we were showing, for example, at Dreamforce this year was a bicycle demo, but you were able to ask about all sorts of like gear shifting and basically anything you want about the products. And then you could even say, hey, would it be good for this type of terrain, this use case? I have this competition, and the machine could even provide guidance there. So the focus there is how can we make sellers more effective through the same concept of marrying customer data with product information.
Yeah, I think that's key. AI is great, but AI is only going to ever be as good as the data. So I think bringing all that product information into Salesforce to be leveraged by then Agentforce is a win from start, because the more data, the better. Like you said, the better the answers you're going to get from the agent.
Yeah, I mean that 100%. And then if you look at like the alternatives of how to do it, they're all very hard without Pimly. It's a lot of connecting different systems and integrations, and so we think like even on a smaller scale, we make it easier to achieve this vision. And then Salesforce is wonderful in terms of giving you all the tooling and the technology that you need to really actually make a difference within businesses. So that is fundamental for our future, and a huge focus for Pimly as we enter 2025 is being a leader in not only in the PIM category as it relates to AI, but more broadly within the Salesforce ecosystem. We're focused on being a leader there because we feel like we have this like kind of architectural data like concept advantage, but then we also feel like as a result we have all these pragmatic use cases for it that customers are responding to really, really positively, and so we'll be getting data back in Q1 about how that's being used and the value that's being driven and all that we'll expand upon.
Excellent. I'm going to pivot again a little bit. So when did you first get involved in the Salesforce ecosystem, and how does it compare to sort of the other SaaS ecosystems you've worked in?
Yeah, good question. So I first entered in as a customer. I feel like that's probably not that crazy. I bought Salesforce twice. I've implemented it twice in two different capacities. I'd say the most significant was when I was selling video software into the education space here in the States, which got very big very quickly. And so we decided at that company, we were going to try to use Salesforce as a true distribution asset. And so we spent a lot of time building that out. And that's really where I got to know the true power of Salesforce. Before then, I kind of thought of Salesforce, how I would say, like a lot of people not in the ecosystem think of it as effectively a CRM, a sales CRM. And that's where I started to learn, what it can actually do and how different customers are using it. And so that actually got me excited. It kind of introduced me, that project, into Pimly. I got to know some of the folks that I'm working with now. And from there, what I've gotten excited about is learning just to the degree with which companies are investing in Salesforce as the platform to effectively run the front office of their business. And so being able to see the synergistic effects of having having Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, having your commerce element be on the same platform. Data Cloud has been super, super interesting. It makes it obvious to me why Salesforce is positioned really favorably in terms of AI with Agentforce, in a way that maybe some other customers might not be. And when I say that, I mean like with these pragmatic, actual business use cases that companies will feel confident in utilizing in the very short or near term. And so it's probably not the most exciting story in the world. I just using it, learned a lot about it, decided this is the place that I wanted to live. And I'd say outside of the actual product and the Salesforce product suite, the other piece that I've really come to adore is the actual ecosystem that Salesforce has put out there. So the platform is incredible, the Salesforce platform, but the ISVs and then the SIs, the consultants, and all of the ancillary characters around the edges, I think also really put Salesforce in a different category of its own. And so where that shows up is, being able to put together a truly wonderful solution, and which maybe it's not always just Pimly. There might be other elements, right? So like with PDF Butler, we have mutual customers who then want to transfer that product information into a PDF and deliver it. Like we can't develop that, ourselves. And so being able to have access to, PDF Butler as a partner through the ecosystem makes a difference, and the customers love it. And then you have like a wealth of these SIs and consultants who deeply understand the customer businesses and the Salesforce ecosystem. And so it is really, I would say, a unique landscape. So how it compares to other ecosystems that's probably the biggest differentiator. So before this, I was, primarily working in, it felt like fractured kind of software industries, if that makes any sense. And so the way that it seemed is like everybody was kind of navel gazing or building their product, but not looking across, products or use cases or needs for the customer. And so then how that would show up is, so when I was leading enablement and RevOps at a company, to give you like one example, we had 13 tools. There were 23 screens our sellers would hit, and 11 of them allowed you to email the customer. And it was just like, so everyone had this redundant and it created confusion, where the Salesforce ecosystem, you can really tailor and build a truly powerful, unique solution based on the customer's needs.
Yeah, I think, and it's been a theme of speaking to other people during this series about the collaboration, both not with Salesforce, but within the community as well. Has been a big. I think everyone is trying to be successful together. It feels like there's not like this big. It's not always a war. There's actually coming together, and we've all got our competitors, etc. But I think outside of that, there is definitely this feeling of, hey, let's all go and win this together. There's enough out there to go and win together as well.
Couldn't agree more. It's super powerful.
Indeed. So to swing a little bit to sort of growth strategies. So obviously part of your role is in growth. So there's so many strategies out there: partnerships, content, events, products, etc. What's Pimly? What's been the most effective sort of growth lever that you've experienced so far with the growth of Pimly?
Yeah, so there's kind of like three that have been really successful for us to date. So I'll just mention the first because it's fairly rudimentary for any software business starting up. It's just your inbound demand. Create something people want, market it, people will find it, they'll show up, especially if you're a bunch of good people trying hard and doing the right thing, right? So that one's pretty straightforward. I'd say the two more interesting ones would be so we've talked a little bit about like collaboration in the Salesforce environment. So Salesforce does an absolute magical job with their events and their event schedules. And so like that's a great way. It has been a great way for us to get really tapped in, promoted, and recognized within the ecosystem. So we participate in a large number of Salesforce events, which have proven very fruitful for us. They're incredibly fun. I mean, they're awesome. And that's been great in introducing us to all sorts of different folks and that sort of thing. The third element I'd say is a bit unique, maybe a little bit more modern. And it's really, I think, fruitful and possible, again, because of the Salesforce ecosystem. And so the third element is now there's new tools that exist that allow us to get data about buyers before they even engage, specifically with Pimly or with a salesperson. So we understand, who's engaging with us across these, like our digital presence online. And then we're also able to see through a couple other buyer intent tools, who's just more broadly like looking at this category and interested in us in this, which is helpful in one degree, because then you kind of know who's considering our category and who to reach out to. But because of the ecosystem, we get kind of an additional advantage to that. And so what I mean by that is we're able to get these signals, these intent signals back to us, and then triangulate those with both Salesforce and then potentially the consultants that the organizations are working with. So that means we can have conversations if it's the right fit or if it's worthy of a recommendation before even reaching out and bothering the customer to them. And that's proven really fruitful. I mean, the number of times that I've heard, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we need. Like, we didn't know it existed. Thanks for reaching out. We've been looking for something like that. Is on the one hand, it's amazing. On the second hand, it means I got a little bit more work to do on the awareness side. So like there's less surprises downstream, but that's been, that was an idea that we had earlier this year that we've really taken advantage of. And so like G2 Crowd has been a wonderful partner of ours in that effort, among a couple others. And just to flag another one, we sell, so a PIM solution in Pimly, it doesn't serve itself to be a product-led growth tool. Like there's some, like, so in my previous company, I was selling video software. It was so easy to use, so simple. There's no setup. You basically pay and then you get access and you start using it. So a product-led growth model works phenomenally there for demand. For a PIM, you got to set it up. You got to put your data in there. There's a few steps, right, to go through that. And so we decided we wanted to give our buyers an experience before they even needed to or engaged with us. So we partnered with a company called fullcontext.ai to provide this test experience on our website. So someone can come in, they can get it, like there's videos and experience. There's an AI bot that they can have a communication with. Customers seem to love that. It answers a lot of their questions before they make a decision to go ahead and interact with us. And then we get a better understanding of who's looking at this, who's evaluating this. So then again, we can kind of triangulate. So effectively what we're trying to create is a little bit of a flywheel effect with this. And so those two vendors in particular, G2 Crowd and Full Context, have been wonderful to work with.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think as the buying people have become more educated, there's more content online, et cetera, et cetera. I think people just want to get their hands on it. So I think that's obviously a great way. They can go and get their hands on it a little bit. You also get to know a little bit about what they're looking at. So therefore it makes that targeting a bit easier. But I think, yeah, people just want to dive in now. People are more tech savvy than they ever have. They don't need to be sold by someone. They want us to just go and touch it and break it and play with it.
Yeah, can I address that for 1 second?
So, yeah, absolutely.
So I've held this belief for a while, and it was validated when I went to the Gartner and Forrester events a few years back. But there was a book called Predictable Revenue that came out, I don't know, a couple decades ago at this point now.
Yeah.
And broadly speaking, companies have gotten really good at this playbook. And so a component of that's gotten really good is producing content. And so there is more content out there available to buyers than there ever has been before. And so where the game used to be, how can we, provide great content, educate, provide commercial insights that drive purchases? Now, I fundamentally believe that like our role as go-to-market leaders or sales leaders specifically is more of a sense-making role. So it's not just, hey, like here's a bunch more information, have at it. It's let me help deconflict and help you understand the information and what's relevant to you or what's most important to you. And yes, it's becoming table stakes that people can actually test, use, get their hands on that information, I think is a part of that sense-making operation. And I think companies that don't help their buyers make sense of all this information are going to struggle. And so that's another element to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So taking a look now a little bit back at your previous roles. So you've had, obviously, like you've described, a diverse number of roles in sales, RevOps, marketing, etc. How do you think all those experiences have shaped like your now leadership approach at Pimly today?
So it's indexed up empathy. So early on, when I had just like a sales perspective, I didn't truly understand what it took, especially if you have a large team, what it takes to go from like a concept or an idea to actually then rolling that out, deploying it, and managing it. And so, having spent time in RevOps, marketing, and then enablement, you have a really strong sense of like what behavior change actually takes and what that looks like. And so, how that shows up practically is like if we come up with a really good idea, right? You got to expect that it's going to take a little bit of time for that to actually take. Like it's not going to happen within a week. And so it's been helpful in being able to identify, like I would call it quicksand or potholes down the road, and then account for those earlier on in the process. And then the other piece, and this is pretty basic, but I fundamentally view most of it as like different silos of data that help you make better decisions, right? So like at this point, I have a pretty good handle on like RevOps and how the brain of the go-to-market organization thinks and operates, and then what kind of data you get from sales, what kind of data you get from marketing. And so even simple things like planning, building out a model for the year and what that should look like becomes a bit easier because you're able to actually embrace and understand these different elements as they go through. And I will say, having being in sales and marketing, being responsible for both as well, is important because it gets rid of I'd say the traditional like finger pointing that happens between sales, marketing, and product in like a traditional org. So with these revenue orgs, we're responsible for both. I think that's the right approach because you're all on the hook for the same thing, which is sales number goes up at the end of the year. So you get stronger alignment when those groups are operating under the same umbrella is my opinion. So I think it's been fundamental for me. It's been super enjoyable to learn each of the disciplines, but I definitely would say I'm a professional salesperson. That would be my main discipline, but the others are very, very important.
Yeah, and I think I think, like you said, it's the empathy of knowing, okay, how does that affect that, and how do I get to move everyone in the same direction? And like you said, sales and marketing is a constant, almost a battle between, hey, we want more leads, but yeah, you need to close more leads. It becomes that sort of game. So putting them all together, I think it's that communication and driving people the same way, I think definitely helps.
Yeah. And then identifying the metrics, the signal metrics, that's the other piece too, because sometimes you can get lost in the sauce in terms of like the second order or third order metrics, but identifying like which are the right ones that further inform whether or not your tactic or your strategy is working effectively or not, and then changing course or continuing or stopping entirely, I think is important. So I look back on that experience very positively. I think it's been good for me. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you now to put on your marketing hat in here. And so what advice would you give someone looking to break into marketing, and maybe especially in and around an ISV? It's a different ecosystem. You're working with Salesforce. You've got your own product on Salesforce. So what advice would you give like a wannabe or an aspiring marketeer looking to help with an ISV?
Yeah, so probably two different pieces of advice. So like just general advice is just get started, just do the thing. I think that, what served me well and what I think the most talented people that I've ever worked with is they do the thing. So yes, they'll plan, they'll think, they'll do it. But doing something, I'm stealing this from somebody on LinkedIn, but doing something creates information, which then allows you to make better decisions. So just get started. I mean, if I'm just getting started in marketing, just take a stab, raise your hand, do the thing. It might not be perfect, you might fail, but you'll get good more quickly if you just do it. And then rinse it and repeat. Specifically within the Salesforce ecosystem, I think it's important to think about your audience because you kind of have 3 or 4 different audiences, depending on if you consider your internal team a part of your audience. I always would, because I think you want to update your internal team with what's going on. They can be supportive and help you with different things. But the 3 audiences are obviously your customer. So you want to be able to, message very, why are you unique? Why are you different? It has to be very simple. You don't have many seconds for people to grasp that. So, marketing your customer is critical. Most people, you learn that in school. You can find a ton of content online about the best ways to do message mapping and ideal customer profiles and putting together a buying group and that sort of stuff. Well, in the ISV space, you also have this amazing opportunity of Salesforce proper, and then all of the consultants and SIs around the side. So if you think about marketing you're marketing to the customer, but you're marketing with and you're marketing through Salesforce and the SIs and consultants. And so you want to make sure, when you have great wins, customer stories, business value, you want to make sure that you're marketing that back to the relevant teams within Salesforce, because they're getting, there's a lot of ISVs and they're getting a lot of messages. So being crisp and simple and then developing a narrative around what you're doing is super, super important, because when Salesforce starts plugging you in as a solution for their customers, that's a beautiful thing. And then the same concept applies to your partners. So we use consultants to implement Pimly. And so you want to think about marketing to them a bit differently as an audience too. So what are their incentives? What are they after? And why do they care? Everybody ultimately cares about the customer success. But are you making their lives easier? Are you developing quick wins for them? Are you helping them differentiate their consultancy from another, which is very important because that consultancy space is hyper competitive. And so they're looking for any, ways that they can further differentiate their business. And so that would be thinking through the audiences and having different pillars, I think is important. I don't think it needs to be these crazy elaborate journeys. It can be fairly grassroots to start, but tactically, having when you're building out a customer story, have a version of that for Salesforce that might look very similar to the one that you send out to the consultants. I think if you're doing that, you're probably in a good spot. If you're not, that's probably a miss given the Salesforce ecosystem.
I think you're right. Hey, just go out and do it. You've got to, yeah. What's that saying? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, or whatever it is. So yeah, you've got to go and do that thing as well, for sure. So, penultimate question, I guess. So, we've talked an awful lot about work and Salesforce ecosystem, etc. But what does life look like for you outside of work, and how do you maintain that sort of work-life balance, which sometimes can be hard to do, especially as we're in growing companies?
Yeah, I love starting and building companies. So personally, I just want to disclaimer, it's energizing for me, where I think I recognize not everybody loves organized chaos on a regular basis, that you definitely get at smaller companies. At a larger company, probably a little bit less so, but you definitely do need to have a different So like what I'm trying to say is, to a degree for me personally, like work is a little bit of a hobby as well,
Yeah.
which I don't know if that's viewed the same way by everybody, but you have to break away because it is hard. Building is hard. It's a new challenge pretty regularly at each stage. And so outside, I mean, obviously I've spent time with my family, that sort of stuff. But the big thing for me, every single week, at least once, if not twice, I play, I go off, I play soccer. So like, I would say like whatever your thing is where you can, really, you don't have to think, you just unplug and enter flow state. That's the thing for me, which then I guess extends to watching a lot of soccer on the weekends. But that's how I tend to break off. But I mean, the other habit that we've got into at Pimly is we try to make life, we try to not take ourselves too seriously. Like, obviously we think we're on a very serious mission. We're making a difference in the business world, especially, but having fun at work is super important. So I don't think you're going to go to a Pimly all hands where you're not going to laugh, for example. Yeah. So that's pretty big. I'm kind of a boring person, I'd say, but I embrace that. But for me, the thing is that forces me to disconnect is athletics and soccer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's got a job that doesn't feel like they're always working all the time is a bonus. I'm similar as well. As I love the job I do, so it doesn't always feel like a job. So it's not that. I've had those jobs in the past, don't get me wrong, clock in, clock out, don't ever think about it again. But yeah, in the role that I do, and similar to you now, it's almost a hobby. Yeah. Not quite, but it's almost a hobby. Yeah.
Not quite, which is why they pay you to do it. But exactly. But it is, my take on it is just from a broader perspective is like, you're going to have some jobs you do for a year or two, and then you're going to have some jobs that feel really great, and you should do those for 5 years plus. And so like Pimly, I've had a couple of those. Pimly is one of them now, where I enjoy the problems, the challenges, and I think that's kind of what you're looking for, because then you don't think about that clock in, clock out. It's more about, how do I solve this problem in front of me, which I find energizing personally.
Yeah, I think, and not getting too deep in meaningful. I think life's too short to do a job that you can't stand. Like, my advice would be, if you don't like it, get out. If you can, just get out and do something else, for sure.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason. I mean, probably like the diversity in my background, and then joining startups, is because I like that, and then that's kind of what creates that for me. But I know plenty of people who they really want to go deep on one thing, and that, so it's just a little bit different for them. And there's different mechanisms to do that. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. Life's short.
So final question. So rapid fire this time. So this or that. So I'm going to say two things, and almost whatever comes into your mind in terms of which you prefer. So, PIM or CRM?
Oh, PIM. I mean,
yeah.
That's a hard one. That's a tough one. I mean, I gotta say PIM, but but one doesn't really exist without the other.
There you go. Eh? But yeah, it's fine. The bosses at Pimly will be happy. You've made the right answer. So there you go. Yeah. So LinkedIn scrolling, podcast listening.
Sorry, what was the first piece?
LinkedIn scrolling or podcast listening?
Ooh, that's hard. I do both intensely. Can I caveat it, or do I got to pick one?
Pick one, eh? No on the fence. One doesn't exist tomorrow.
I spend more time podcast listening, so I'll say podcast listening in the aggregate. I do a fair bit of LinkedIn scrolling as well.
Any top recommendations, podcasts whilst we're here?
Well, so oddly, given the nature of this podcast, when I listen to podcasts, they're mostly history podcasts, because I like to learn, but break away from that. Whereas like when I'm LinkedIn scrolling, it's usually more focused around business related items. Let me try to think of a relevant business.
No, I think it has to be business. I think, what's your number one? Hey, what's your go-to podcast? I think that's more interesting than finding a business one. What's the podcast you never miss?
The podcast I never miss. Lately, there's oh my gosh, It's Dan Carlin has a podcast called Hardcore History, which is very well done. They are, disclaimer, they're like 5 hours long. They're very long and deep. But that's probably my number one. For walks with the dog, for in the car. That podcast is huge. It's amazing too. The elements and things you can learn from history that are applicable to business.
It repeats itself, eh? History tends to repeat itself. So yeah, it's interesting. Okay, next one. Mountain hiking, city exploring.
Mountain hiking. I've lived I'm done with city life at this point, but yeah, mountain hiking.
So I probably know the answer to this one, but it's always interesting from an American point of view. So soccer or American football?
Oh, soccer, 100%. Our Arsenal Football Club is my passion. So okay. I'm probably unique being in the States choosing that.
Yeah. We can still be friends. I'm a Manchester United fan, but I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you this once. It's okay.
Well, sorry about the other one.
Well, I'm used to it now. I've had 10 years of United being rubbish, but I had 20 years of success before, so I guess it balanced itself out at some point.
Yeah, it goes up and down. We had our trough period. But we're feasting at this point.
Okay, this is a marketing one, really. So, data analytics or creative campaigns?
Data analytics. I actually feel pretty. I know I'm supposed to just answer, but I feel pretty strongly about this one. If you're going to be a modern marketer in the SaaS world, you have to have a handle on data because it informs everything else. Whereas I think like brand messaging and marketing, it's if you're really into that, I think there's other industries that you're going to thrive in. Like in Chicago, we have a ton of them because we have two really good MBA programs, Northwestern being one that pumps people out into, companies. Well, you could be like a whole product manager at a big food manufacturer. And I think that piece is really valuable. But if you're starting a career in SaaS marketing, getting a handle on how to collect, aggregate, organize, and think about data, and then take action on it is going to set you apart.
Fantastic. Hey, Brian, thank you very much for joining me. Absolute pleasure having you. And best of luck for the rest of the year and into 2025.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. I obviously really enjoy the partnership with PDF Butler. We think you guys are wonderful, and what you're doing is fantastic.
Any kind words. Appreciate it.